Yeah, no problem. All right, thank you and welcome to the Cotati City Council meeting and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. Today is Tuesday, June 11th. We welcome everybody in the audience and those watching us at home. And before we do a roll call, I would just like to introduce everybody that's up here tonight. Myself, I'm your mayor, John DeLosso. We have the vice mayor, Wendy Skillman, council members Mark Landman, John Moore, Susan Harvey. I should have looked before I pointed, but I think I got you guys all in the right order. Our city manager, Damien Obid. Our new city attorney, John Bacher, your very first meeting, so welcome that you're here. Our chief of police, Michael Parrish. Our city engineer and director of public works, Craig Scott. And our administrative services director, Angela Corter. I see another person at our staff table, and I remember you, but it's been a while. I know why you're here.
Can you read his name from there?
Bob Smith, that's right, code enforcement. Thank you for being here. That'll be one of our agenda items this evening. And I've gotten everybody, and our city clerk, Lauren Burgess. All right, with that, I guess we could take a quick roll call, even though it seems like we're all here.
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Harvey?
Here.
Mayor Deloso?
Here.
Vice Mayor Stillman?
Here.
Councilmember Landman?
Here. And I am going to ask our honorary mayor, Kays, to come up to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could all stand, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much for that. We are now already at item 4, which is approval of minutes and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and or adopted under this agenda.
So moved. I'd second.
We have a motion and a second, and I have a correction.
Oh.
I'm so excited when I can find a typo in the minutes. It just love that. And you will find on packet page 9, the very first line where it says Councilmember Landmand. I can't believe you didn't catch that, Mark.
I kind of liked it, actually.
You did? Okay, well, all right. Well, we have a new nickname for you, but if we could just drop that last D, and we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Please show that's a 5-0 vote in favor for those incredibly wonderful minutes. And we'll move on to item 5 now, which is announcements. Meeting orientation for new audience and viewers. In conformance with the Brown Act and the adopted City Council rules, the meeting agenda includes items labeled as action items, where the City Council will consider the item and citizens are afforded the opportunity to provide comments relevant to the item being discussed. The meeting agenda also includes a citizen's business item, which is the designated place on the agenda where citizens have the right to say whatever they wish. The City Council may or may not choose to respond to comments as the government code allows. However, if the City Council declines to respond, it should not be perceived as giving credence to or agreeing with any statements that the City Council or its members believe are incorrect, misinformed, or purposefully biased. The City of Cotati has special open office hours on Monday evenings from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. by appointment in the Community Development Department at City Hall as part of its Cotati Open for Business program. This program provides personalized assistance and information to developers, current Cotati business owners, and those interested in starting a new business within the city. The Rohnert Park Cotati Regional Library hosts events for all ages, including art exhibits, book clubs, and children's programs. All events are free and open to the public. For more information, call the library at 584-9121 or visit them at sonomalibrary.org. The Cotati Historical Society Museum is open regularly the second Tuesday of each month from 5 to 7 p.m., Saturdays from 1 to 4 p.m., and by appointment. For more information, call 707-794-0305. Citizens interested in receiving City of Cotati community alerts via text or email are encouraged to sign up at nixle.com or by texting your zip code, 94931, to 8, yeah, thank you very much for that, and you text it to 888777. And finally, Measure G supports police services, a variety of recreation programs for all ages, and the maintenance of our streets, parks, and public buildings. See details on the web at cotaticity.org. All right, that brings us to item 6, which is our honorary mayor. We're going to ask Hayes to come back up. And it's a little bit out of sync because you were here about a month ago, but that's okay because, you know, vacations are things you need to take advantage. When the staff told me that you were coming back to this meeting, I was like, wow, that's very impressive that he's taking that responsibility. So I know you were given a little bit of a homework assignment, and if you got some feedback from friends, we'd love to hear about it. So take it away.
I definitely do. So one of the first ideas that we kind of came across is promoting and advertising more youth sports. So Cotati doesn't have any real youth sports programs, and so I think that we should be more promoting other local sports programs, so like baseball, basketball, soccer, football, flag football. Like one example is flag football. I didn't even know that existed until someone told me about it, and then it ended up being so great because it's something where it's fun, and like for kids who don't really like the whole tackling part of football, it's a way for them to just play the sport that they love. And I think that the city, if they promoted that, that would help a lot of kids open the door to athletics for them and would make that an option for them. And then also possibly if families can't afford to enroll their kids in a sports program, they could get a scholarship for their children, because it's kind of upsetting to think about a kid who doesn't even get to play a sport just because their parents can't afford it. So if that's possible. So my second idea is making downtown a more kid-friendly area. So downtown there's a lot of bars and adult-only places, so it's really a spot that kids can't really go into. And one way that we can make this more kid-friendly and inviting is trying to redo the Cotati market. And now I know this is not owned by you guys, and this is a private business, so you guys don't own it. But the market is kind of sketchy and is a place that a lot of people probably don't feel very safe in, and it's not a very approachable place. And if we were able to make that more kid-friendly and more inviting, I feel like that would really make downtown feel more approachable to children, and kids can have a lot more fun and feel like that's somewhere that they can go to and have a good time with their friends. So another idea I have is promoting and getting more involved in Roanoke Park schools. So I know there are only a few, if one, school in Cotati, and I think promoting and supporting those schools in Roanoke Park would really help, because a lot of the residents in Cotati end up sending their kids to Lawrence Jones or Rancho Cotati, and that's something I feel that the city could help promote. And like things like, I'm not saying this specifically, but like for example the Expeditionary Learning Program, just because I feel like that's something that a lot of our citizens would be interested in, and that's be something that definitely a lot of the citizens' children would be drawn towards. And now my third idea, which was brought to me by one of my friends, was advertising public events, like more for the youth. So I know you advertise like the farmers market and your different events in the park via Facebook, and then also on the website. But those are two platforms that I feel not a lot of kids use. And so some things that you guys could do is possibly making an Instagram account, because that's something that a lot of the youth use, and that'd be something that would be more accessible to children. And then also possibly a text remind, and that's something that kids would be able to take more advantage of and have that information for them.
Wow, that's awesome. So are you telling me, because I only have a Facebook page, that I am an older person? I think that's what I heard. I'm okay with that. I just wanted to clarify that. So.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's it. Right.
That's okay. I would tell him too, so it's okay.
It's good. It's good. My daughter has told me for years that Facebook is for old people. I really appreciated that when I heard of that. Anyway, I'm going to come back to you, don't worry. But I'm going to go down to Councilmember Moore, and we're going to go around and see if there's any comments or questions for you. Thank you for your presentation.
Well, thanks so much for going out and gathering that information. That's a lot of information that you're bringing back. I think that some of the ideas that you have would work well with some of our communication and outreach we have, like through the school districts and things like that. I don't see us on Instagram and/or Snapchat, but I think some of those are great ideas, and there's some things that we can probably look into. So, thank you so much.
All right. Councilmember Harvey?
Yes, thank you for the ideas. You know, it is possible that maybe we can put links to some of the stuff that's going on, because it is a Cotati Roanoke Park School District. It is a district for both cities, very specifically so. But we probably could advertise more of the information that they have, or at least put links to the information that the school has on there. And I hear you about the downtown, but we happen to have a member of the Chamber of Commerce here, so I'm sure that they heard that, and maybe that there's a bug in someone's ear that they can do something about that, because they interact a lot with the businesses downtown. But thank you so much, and maybe, you know, you don't know, maybe Ashley will get an Instagram for us, so you never know. But thank you.
I know I won't be opening an Instagram account
No.
for the city. Let's be
You
clear on
won't.
that. Councilmember Landman.
Boy, this is the time I wish I had an Instagram account, because boy, could I have fun of telling the mayor that. But we'll get to that in a second. First of all, thanks for pointing out the ideas regarding the various sports programs. And I found it interesting, you mentioned even you were unaware of some of them, which tells me probably getting the word out more would be a good thing for these things, a good public service. So I wonder if you've already got contact info for some of this, if you could share it with either Ashley or to her through the city manager, one way or the other. That might be something we might be able to roll over into some of our content, like our newsletter, or dare I say it, our Facebook page. But that segues me to, actually, I like the idea of an Instagram account. I mean, obviously, it's easy for me to say because I don't have to do the work of running it. But I know Ashley's been rolling out social media for the city the last year, so we're probably in a position to look at that pretty easily. And we already have a lot of content, and I do take your point that it might be smart to winnow that content and see what's more appropriate for Instagram. So maybe we can do something like that. So we'll see what we can do. If you could share that with them, that gives them a head start, all right? So thank you for being here. Pleasure.
And Vice Mayor Skillman.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for all of the thought and consideration that you put into this project. I mean, it was really well. You could tell that you put some time into it, so appreciate that. And I do know also, being the parent of a teenager, know that we've ruined Facebook for our kids. It's true. I think we've also ruined tattoos, but that's a whole other issue. But anyway, but no, I think that's great, though, that especially because Ashley is trying to get more social media, and of course her programs are very youth focused, and so I think it would be great to have an Instagram presence, or I think TikTok might be pushing it, but you know, we'll see. But anyway, so thank you very much again for being here, and really appreciate the effort that you've put into this.
My turn again. I'll take it easy on you, I promise. So, first of all, do you have anyone that brought you here, you came with, that you would like to introduce to everybody?
Sure. My dad, Dennis Dromlar, and then my mom, Liz Dromlar.
Okay, neither of them are waving, so there they go. Now they're waving. Very good. Okay, wow, he's just, he gives me an answer and he just ready to move on. Okay, good. So I'm really glad that you came up with some of these ideas. I think I missed something when I was writing it down, though, when you were talking about the downtown being more kid-friendly, and you mentioned the Cotati Market.
Yes.
I'm not sure exactly what you're speaking of with that.
Oh, okay. So, like, downtown's a lot of bars and a lot of places that kids probably don't feel like they could go into or just hang out. But I feel like part of that is also the Cotati Market. It's kind of run down in somewhere that I feel like a lot of kids wouldn't feel comfortable going into. And I feel like if that was a place that kids feel comfortable going to and feel like that's somewhere that they want to go to, that would make downtown a lot more kid-friendly and inviting for everyone.
Gotcha. Yeah. it is definitely more geared more towards adults at this point. So, so really good points. Thank you for that. So with that, I'm sure one parent must have a camera and on their phone, and as we present this award to you, they're going to walk up and get pictures of the 5 of us with you. How's that? All right, let's move on. And you know, normally we do this honorary mayor program during the school year, and this is the point where I would say we know it's a school night, so you can leave whenever you want. But being that it's summer, you should stay here till the very bitter end of this meeting. It's just an idea. It's up to you. We'll see what happens. All right. Let's move on to item 7, which is the introduction and swearing in of Reserve Officer Ryan Sullivan. I'll turn it over to the chief.
Coming up to the podium, Ryan. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Thank you for this opportunity to swear in Ryan Sullivan as our newest reserve police officer for our city. A little bit about Ryan. He's from Sonoma County all his life, Petaluma to be exact, and he went to St. Vincent de Paul High School. He must have been a good student because after that he attended San Diego State University and got a Bachelor of Science in Economics. He then returned to our area and worked in the medical field for quite a few years and ended up at the Santa Rosa JC Police Academy, graduating from there. And what's interesting is he is a full-time employee for the city of Roanoke Park. He's actually a community service officer for the Department of Public Safety there. Just like Kerry Peoples is for us, that's what he does full-time. But he's going to add this to his busy life. So having said that, I'm ready for him to take the oath. And after he takes the oath, his fiancée, Stephanie's going to do the badge pinning.
All right, so we'll hold any of our comments and questions until that official ceremony is over. Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Ryan Sullivan,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental purpose
without any mental reservation
or
purpose of evasion,
evasion,
that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
Stand fast here.
Isn't this where we applaud?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not sure why I had to cue the back row to applaud at this point in time, but I'm getting them into the meeting. This is good. So Ryan, if you'd like to just say a few words about, anything you'd like, step right up. Now's your chance.
Appreciate the opportunity to serve Cotati. It's a nice area, and excited, so thank you.
Great. Well, no. Not so fast, not so fast. We'll start with Councilmember Landman with any questions or comments.
I actually didn't have any, but when you tried to get away so quick, I felt like, oh, well, wait a minute. Welcome, Ryan. Very good to see you. Always enjoy this. Quick question. So tell me just briefly about the path from Bachelor of Science in Economics to law enforcement.
After college, worked in an office, decided it wasn't for me, and I sold medical devices after that, and that was fun, but decided I wanted something more fulfilling, so pursued law enforcement.
Well, you'll have something different every day in law enforcement, that's for sure. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
You should also have some really good background for our new citation program that we're going to hear about later. So economics and police, this perfect match. So Vice Mayor Skillman.
You stole my joke, but
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Notice that it crashed. So lucky you.
I appreciate you taking that bullet for me.
Not a problem.
Oh, well, that was a good pun. So anyway, welcome to Cotati. Thank you very much in advance for your service, and it's also nice just having somebody who knows the local area so that you're a little bit more familiar. It's kind of hard sometimes when somebody comes from far, far away to explain the different neighborhoods and relationships, and so you've been a neighbor, it sounds like most of your life, either at Petaluma or now even working in Roanoke Park. You're right next door, so that's fantastic. So thank you very much for making the decision to come and be part of our reserve.
I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Councilmember Harvey?
Yes, well, welcome. I know the paths we take sometimes aren't the ones that we thought that we were headed on. My daughter did a similar thing. She went and ended up in an office, and she said, this is not for me, and now she's a nurse. So yeah, we take different paths, but we ultimately get where we are to be, and you are obviously to be with working with people. So welcome, and thank you for choosing Cotati.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Councilmember Moore.
Ryan, welcome. I have a couple of quick questions for you. As a community service officer in Roanoke Park, I'm curious why you are interested in coming over to Cotati versus staying with Roanoke Park and becoming a policeman firefighter.
I like the community of Cotati. It's a great place. And just, it felt like the right fit. People seem happy here. So I decided to give it a shot, and Chief Parrish was kind enough to work around my schedule at Roanoke Park so I could give it a shot, and so far it's been great.
How long will you be staying with Roanoke Park, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, just because you're just a reserve officer at this point.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I'll try not to hold that against you. And then the only other point I was going to make was not also holding against you the fact that you're from St. Vincent's, because both John and I went to St. Vincent's just a couple of years ago. So welcome. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I mean, I graduated from St. Vincent's in '79. Would you graduate in 80, 81? Were you even born? Don't even say no. Why did I even ask that question? Gee. But I did, the chief did say, something to the effect of that, he graduated from St. Vincent's, and obviously it gave him a great education, and then he went on to San Diego State or University?
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Yeah, so that's kind of being redundant, saying if you went to St. Vincent's, you got a great education. I just want you to remember that in the future. So with that, welcome. We hope you have a nice long career here. We're going to see as things open up, maybe, something will happen sooner than later. And just like with our honorary mayor, you're not in school, back row's not in school, but if you guys need to cut out, clearly you've got good reasons. So again, Ryan, congratulations and thanks for joining our team.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we're at item 8, and that is approval of final agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Just one suggested change, moving item 13A up to before citizens' business.
Before citizens' business?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have a little one in the audience, so, yeah.
I know. Are we going to appoint the baby to the planning commission? Yes. Oh, well, see, okay. Then, yeah, no, we'll definitely move it up. All right, so move 13A up. Well, if it's before citizens' business, that would be right now. Well, look at that. I figured that all out all by myself. That is amazing. No, please, please. It's a little embarrassing, but I'll get over it. All right.
St. Vincent Education.
It's that St. Vincent education. All right, we will now take, slightly out of order, item 13A, which is under the regular agenda, which is appointment of a planning commission member. And I will turn that over to the city manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So just really briefly, this is outlined in the staff report. Well, actually, before I even start with that, one thing I just want to point out, there's a small typo on the theme of typos tonight.
Oh, good.
The person that has been nominated by Councilmember Lamon is Brittany McCanney. I think I pronounced that right, McCanney. And it's McKannay, as you'll see it in the application, but in the recommendation, there's a missing A there. So I just wanted to let you know about that. All right, so the Planning Commission is comprised of 5 members, each of which are nominated by one of the 5 council members, and is ratified by a majority of the council per the municipal code that regulates such activities. And the current vacancy is due to the resignation of Commissioner Ben Ford, who resigned after many years due to other just life commitments, work commitments. And then the vacant position, as you saw in the packet, was advertised on this, you saw the notice, the advertising notice. It was also on the city's marquee in the newspaper and on the city's website. And there was 2 applications that were received, and they're also attached for review. Brittany was one of them, and Aaron Murphy was the second, both of which are attached. As I mentioned at the outset, Councilmember Lamon's nomination for this item is Brittany, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions from council members for
Not at
staff?
the moment.
Any questions in this way? No, thank you. Not at this point? Okay, you want to hold public comment, or do you have something?
I'll hold it till after public comment. That would be perfect, Mr. Mayor.
Very good, very good. And then I think what I'd like to do is, first of all, ask Brittany to come up to the podium. You don't have to recite any speeches of any kind.
Okay.
But if you'd like to just give the audience just a little bit more maybe of your background and your interest in applying for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brittany McCannay, and I live on West Cotati Avenue. I'm a fairly new resident here to Cotati, and when I saw the notice on Facebook, actually, I was immediately interested in learning more and looking into the opportunity. We moved here and have fallen in love with the community. I think Officer Sullivan said it best. People seem to be really happy here, and we certainly are very happy here, and we see that in those that walk in our neighborhood and that we meet downtown. And my goal in this position is to help support growth while maintaining that culture, that unique culture of Cotati, our small town feel, and really hearing what people are looking to see this community do and grow over the years. Especially since we're fairly new, we plan on spending many, many years here and raising our child here, Bo, who's here tonight. And so we want to be a part of watching the community grow, and I hope I can do that rather well in this position.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much for that. You can, if you'd like to sit back down, I'm just going to go ahead and open this officially up for public comment and see if there's any comments from anybody in the audience. All right, seeing none, I will close the public comment and bring it back to council for further discussion. And we'll start with Councilmember Landman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think this is perhaps the 3rd or the 4th time we've had a chance to talk. I actually just had a chance to meet Ms. McCannay and her husband at a recent planning meeting. We had a conversation. She shared pretty much, I think, what she just shared with you about her feelings about the community, how much they like it here. And then when we got discussing opportunities to serve in the community, it struck me there could be a lot of value sometimes in bringing in a new face, new energy, a fresh viewpoint. And with a little more discussion, I encouraged her to go ahead and submit her name, and I'm happy to put her forward for your ratification. I think it's good to bring in a new viewpoint, and I think it's good to bring somebody who's younger, has a family, and helps give different looks to the various things we need in the community. So with that, I hope that the rest of the council will share my thoughts on this and ratify Ms. McCanny for the Planning Commission.
Excellent, thank you very much. Vice Mayor, any comments?
Well, when I was looking through, because I always want to look at everybody who's applied, and I was looking through and I'm thinking, gosh, these guys have so much in common. This is really, and then I'm like, oh wait, they're married. So I'm glad to see that we've gotten one of you. That's fantastic, and and then obviously to being able to lean on your spouse as far as running ideas past them, and hey, what do you think of this? Is great too. So that's great that you guys will be able to continue to work together to maintain the feel of Cotati. And so with that, I will pass it on to anybody else.
Excellent, thank you. Councilmember Harvey, any comments or questions?
Yes, I actually met Brittany and her husband actually at the Planning Commission meeting too, and it was very nice to hear a new perspective and new people coming in, and it is always wonderful when people view Cotati as their home and want to make it better. So I applaud you for that, and this is one way of doing that, is to serve in the capacity to help build the community. So thank you for that, and I wish you and your family a long stay here. So thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Councilmember Moore?
I would just echo the council's sentiment. I think it's great coming in, having a young family and wanting to be part of the community and continue to allow the community to thrive is great, and thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, Brittany, really appreciate it's a commitment. You know, it's a commitment to the city you live in. It's a commitment away from family time, and that's a reality. I think we've all gone through that in our time serving the city in different capacities. So thank you for stepping, and thank your husband. I don't know if he can hear us. Can you hear all the way out there? You can? Good. Thank you guys both for applying. I know you're going to continue to stay interested in all of the things that are going on in the city, so we really appreciate that. Okay, with that,
If you're looking for a motion.
I'm looking for a motion.
Unsurprisingly, I'd like to move that the council ratify the nomination of Brittany McCanny to fill the vacant Planning Commission position.
I'll second that.
All right, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Please show a 5-0 vote in favor, and congratulations to you and your husband, and get that baby home, because he's probably going to be irritated like I am because of the heat. So no doubt.
Yeah, I know, I was going to say the baby rider.
Thank you. All right, we will now work slightly backwards in our agenda, and we'll go to item 9, which is citizens' business and public comment for consent calendar items. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any item listed on the consent calendar or any matter not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. Pursuant to City Council Policy 2017-02, comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for any and all items on the consent calendar. The mayor may extend the time limit for a reasonable time where a disability accommodation has been requested. And is there anyone with any public comments? Mr. Barrich, please.
For the benefit of the audience and the folks watching at home, my name is George Barrich. I'm a former city councilman here, and that young lady reminded me when I came forward trying to improve my town and how I was received because I didn't fall into line with some of the other council members and represented a minority voice in town. And these people haven't heard that story yet, evidently. But anyway, I digress. I would like to speak about the last city council meeting and let the council know, especially the mayor, that I was flabbergasted to witness citizen Lori Alderman, who sat over there and came forward for weeks, months maybe, trying to get an apology from council member John Moore for an email exchange where he described her in writing as batshit crazy. I was flabbergasted because at the last meeting, Mr. Moore had the audacity of doubling down on his comment in front of the city council, no less, reading the email exchange and trying to justify his calling a tax-paying citizen in good standing who comes here like that lady that just did, in good faith to help out her town, disparaged, insulted, and slandered the way I saw last council meeting. And Mr. Mayor, I really think it's time that you need to man up about this code of conduct for city council members. I looked at you specifically, and you were just expressionless, going along with the disgusting activities of Mr. Moore in that exchange. Now, with the minute I have left, I want the council to know that police officers within the Cotati Police Department and former police officers have confided in me to come forward because they can't at this time to tell you that our police department is completely dysfunctional, and it is responsibility of the police chief himself, Michael Parrish, who is a liar, a bully, and our police department is completely dysfunctional. The morale is very, very low. I have documents I'm willing to share with you of some of the cases that are going on with the city, and I don't want to have to be the bearer of bad news. It's not my responsibility. You folks are getting paid for this. You need to contact some of the former police officers who've either resigned, been unfairly terminated, and so forth, and find out what's going on in our police department right now, why we're not getting law enforcement the way we used to, why we're not getting patrols the way we used to, while some of the officers are watching movies there at night instead of out there doing their job. The list goes on and on. You need to investigate your former police officers and find out what's going on so I don't have to come back here and start reading all the exchanges. I don't want to do it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Seeing no one, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And I'm just going to make a very brief statement that the email, the contextual email read by Councilmember Moore at the last meeting, the reference was, why didn't you call me or us that term? He was not calling Ms. Alderman that term, so that was a misinterpretation on your part. All right, with that, we will go on to item 10, which is our consent calendar, and we have items A, B, C, and D. Is there a motion to approve or to pull anything?
Move to approve?
And I will second that.
We have a motion and a second, and I do want to point out that one of those is the Cotati Police Officers Association Memorandum of Understanding for a 5-year period, which tells me that they're probably pretty pleased working for the Cotati Police Department. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Please show that's a 5-0 vote in favor to approve items A, B, C, and D. And we are at item 11, direction on future agenda items. Do we have any from council members? I'll look towards Councilmember Moore.
Not this
all the way
evening.
down.
No.
No, and no. We have no's across the board. All right, thank you all for that. And we're at item 12, which is public hearings. The first one is the introduction of an ordinance updating the administrative tools for municipal code compliance. I'll turn that over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So this item before you is, as the mayor stated, the introduction of an ordinance for the administrative tools that the city could use for code compliance. And so basically, one of the challenges I think that we have, especially when we have complaints from residents, and they have, I guess broadly what I'd call quality of life, concerns like barking dog next door or whatever, whatever the case may be, from very minor to potentially, more major health, life and safety type things. The only real processes, as outlined in the staff report, that are available to the city right now are the traditional nuisance abatement process or civil litigation, neither of which is fast at all. So that can be, aside from taking a lot of city resources, pulling people off of other work, it also is costly, and it's not very satisfying to the residents that have concerns about things, because it's a very lengthy process. And the new tools that are in this are modeled pretty closely on the City of Sonoma's code compliance program, and it basically falls into two categories. One chapter, in the one chapter in Title I would be adding something called administrative citations, and so that's essentially like a ticket for transitory type issues, things that aren't like chronic and persistent, particularly things that aren't property related. Typically, they're sort of transitory issues that might occur and then disappear for a while and then reoccur, and they're impossible to deal with a nuisance abatement process, because you never get anywhere with that type of tool. And so that's one of the chapters that's in the packet. The other chapter is something called a notice and order, and that is for more chronic, ongoing property-related issues. And that's a process where you basically let someone know that there's an issue, and they're given time to fix it. And it's only if they don't fix it that we have the mechanism to increase the level of tools that we can use to hopefully get compliance for the neighborhood that's having issues with whatever the issue is. So generally, I also would want to point out that in both of these tools, there's the normal and required, of course, due process for anyone that feels like maybe the citation wasn't issued properly, or the notice and order wasn't fair, or whatever their complaint might be. It would go to an administrative hearing officer, who's a third party, that would hear the facts and then make a judgment on it. And then if they're not satisfied with that, they also can appeal it further to Superior Court. And it's not and even at the Superior Court level, it's not it's not like a typical legal process. The rules of the rules around it, and are much more relaxed. So you could just go before a judge. You don't have to have attorneys. You don't have to pay for, so it's not like there's a really high bar to go to Superior Court if that's an appeal route that a particular aggrieved person wants to go. And the last couple of things I'll just point out is that you also will see that in Title I, there's some cleanup in terms of laying out clearly that these are the tools that are available for any violation of the Muni Code. They don't necessarily supersede some other enforcement mechanism that's already codified in the Muni Code in most cases, except for the words edited in this packet. But it just gives another option. So if there's a more efficient way to resolve issues, then it gives sort of a tool to use it for any code issue, any civil code issue. And we have, for the administrative citations, there are, under state statute, some maximum penalties, and they're basically just, they're brought into the ordinance just so they're there. But the plan is that, assuming that this ordinance gets introduced and adopted, is we would come back to council with a administrative fine schedule, very much like the police's bail schedule, that would just lay out the types of administrative infractions that we would most commonly see, and assign bail amounts to them, and that's for the tickets, right? And it sets the ticket amounts. And oftentimes they can be lower than those sort of statutory numbers, depending on what the issue is. And we do have Robert Smith here with us tonight, as was introduced at the beginning of the meeting. He's the city's code enforcement officer, and so he's also available to answer any questions you might have related to some of the details of this. And he also is involved in the City of Sonoma's code enforcement program, so he's very well versed and not only code enforcement in general, but also how these mechanisms operate specifically. And with that, I think I'll just wrap it up, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask either myself or Robert.
All right, no, that's great. Mr. Smith, did you have anything you'd like to add at this point before we get into our questions?
No, I just think that my experience with code enforcement is as the DA becomes less and less of a resource and it becomes more and more cumbersome to take any other approach to get resolution of some of your city ordinances, to create an environment that is improves the quality of life here, that this administrative code structure, as we proposed, is the ideal tool to help us do that.
All right, that's great. And I do remember the presentation you gave when you were here last several months back. So we've been waiting anxiously for this. So this is great. Thank you for bringing this forward to us. Any questions for staff? Councilmember Harvey.
So since this is already in Sonoma, I was wondering how successful as a tool that this has been for them, and how long have they had such a ordinance?
Well, I've been the city prosecutor there for 30 years, and it was a struggle getting resolution of these lower level quality of life issues that actually have more of an effect on whether people are enjoying their day-to-day living experience in a community versus more serious crime. So when we had the opportunity to put into effect this structure in Sonoma, it really absolutely made things work very well. We can deal with a great deal of problems in a relatively short time, which is fair to the citizen, it's fair to the community, and it's fair to the neighbors who live next to a citizen who may be doing something you'd like to change. But the reality is, what I love about this is it gives us two different tools, right? So if we have a transitory issue, then we have a tool for that. If we have more of a chronic issue, then we have a tool for that. And I think the best way to look at it, maybe by analogy, would be the citation process, the ticket process, analogous to a loose dog. So if somebody's not keeping their dog in, eventually, after you warn them enough, you give them a citation and they pay $50 or whatever it is. And if it happens again in less than a year, it's probably $100 and it goes up. So, but if they're running an unpermitted kennel, then that's a chronic issue and the citation process doesn't really work for that. So you need the notice and order, which is a very well laid out document that gives them absolute notice of what they violated, what provisions of the Muni Code, what the factual underpinnings of those violations is in the viewpoint of the city. It gives them an opportunity to cure the problem, 10 days at a minimum, and then it tells them what the consequences are if they don't do it, and it sets a hearing date so that they can get that resolved. They have a hearing date going into it. And my experience in Sonoma is that usually about 95% of the people, as soon as you go, because I don't have any problem picking up a phone here and I'll call somebody and say, hey, I just introduced myself and let you know. 95 or 90% of the time we get compliance. It's just an issue that people are, oh, I didn't know that was bothering my neighbor or whatever. About 8% of the time when you send them a letter, you have to take the next step and you may send them a letter that says, hey, this is a preliminary notice that if you don't cure, we're going to send you a formal notice. And about 8% do that when they realize you're serious, and then you get down to the 2% who just won't do anything, no matter what you do. And this gives you the enforcement tool to get compliance. So in my philosophy on this is going to a hearing is your last resort. But we have matters, we have 17 open matters here, code enforcement issues, and some of these have been around for years because you don't have the enforcement mechanism to get people to comply. They just ignore every letter, and there's no real practical way to approach the problem. So this will allow us to bring resolution to most or all of those, plus all the other ones that are pending. Boy, that was a bird
That's
walk.
okay.
I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Okay.
It's very helpful.
All right, thank you for that question, too. Councilmember Moore?
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. The only thing I had was, what did you find was the most common violations?
In Sonoma?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, right now, because of the way the ordinances are structured, it's smoking, which is completely banned in Sonoma. You can't smoke anywhere except inside your car if there are no children there, or inside a detached single-family dwelling with windows shut. So a lot of people are complaining about that, and it's, you know, obviously that's very difficult enforcement. But apart from that, the run-of-the-mill thing a lot of times is garbage cans. They're out in front of the house, they're full of garbage, nobody moves them in. And I know, I didn't ever expect to see that coming when we put this in place, but a lot of people have that. But for the most part, they vary between, you know, a whole panoply of things, leaf blowers or noise or hot tubs, next door neighbor hot tubs making too much noise. Occasionally they get more serious. You get, you know, you'll get building code violations for people who have constructed things believing that they probably didn't need a permit, actually they do. Or an occasional slumlord issue over there. So, but we can remedy most of those with one of these two tools. In fact, we just absolutely put in place the administrative citation process so that we could balance out. We've had the notice and order, the longer process, the one that takes into account chronic issues. We've had that for about 2 years. The administrative citation process is about 6 months old, but we brought that into place so we could deal with that occasional issue that needs to be addressed by, here's a ticket, don't let it happen again, that kind of thing.
All right, thank you for that. Councilmember Landman. I keep wanting to say landmanned. You realize that. I can't get that out of my head now.
If you slur your words a little, it works either way. I'll respond. Mr. Smith, thank you. Very good to see you here. You know,
thank you.
Looking at this is something I think we've all seen over the years where we've encountered somebody in the community that has some problem in their neighborhood that is just untenable for them. And I know we've worked hard, and I know our staff has worked very hard and been able to help at times. But as you pointed out, it has not been the perfect solution in terms of getting the results as fully as we'd like, and certainly not in the time frame that we'd like. So I'm really looking forward to this because I think it'll be incredibly beneficial for many people in the community. You know, you mentioned a lot of small things. I've seen much bigger things, but, you know, I have sympathy for all those because if you can't have peace in your own home, if there's something distracting, what's the point of local government if there isn't some way to try and help with that? So I wanted to ask you a couple of things. So this is a proven tool that's been in process in the town of Sonoma for some time. Has it ever been legally challenged at any time there?
Not in the city of Sonoma. The concepts have been challenged. This statutory scheme is not unique to Sonoma. It's actually started down in San Bernardino, Riverside County, where they have a lot of issues with chronic property issues. People essentially building above ground landfills, that sort of things. But it was tested. It's tested and true. In fact, there is government code provisions now that authorize cities to do it.
So this has a much deeper history than I was aware of and sounds to be a very proven and effective tool. Let me ask you, in the chronic range of problems where we use notice and order, how often does that wind up being kicked up to Superior Court, and how many times is it just resolved when it becomes clear that the city is serious and intends to remedy the problem?
It does wind up in, I think last year in Sonoma, we opened 500 cases. We closed 300. I think I was in court 4 times.
Okay.
Appeals.
Those are not bad odds. Thank
No.
you very much. I appreciate it. That's helpful. And one last thing for the city manager. So I understand you're the responsible party for assigning a hearing officer if somebody appeals an administrative citation. And I understand, obviously, it says here it's not a city employee or an appointed city official. So typically this is some sort of short-term consultant. Is this something that's readily available on demand in the field, this sort of thing? What's the market for this, and where do we find people to do this?
Yeah, there are these administrative hearing officers. They're, I think, oftentimes attorneys that do this type of service, and it's pretty common.
So they have no ties to us, they do this everywhere, basically.
Yeah.
Good.
Right, yeah, they wouldn't be exclusive to Cotati, they'd work in multiple places.
I would hope not. I don't think they'd have, I would hope they wouldn't have that big a paycheck.
Yeah.
Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Vice Mayor Skillman.
Thank you. I think you may have already answered my question, because when I was reading over the general penalty language, there was nothing about notice. But you were saying basically this is sort of a last ditch. They've already been put on notice that there's an issue. They've given an informal opportunity to fix it, then a formal one, and then it would bump up to using this. Is that
Yeah,
accurate? Or?
That's correct. In the notice and order chapter, it spells out exactly what has to be, before you can take any action, the notice that you have to provide. And that's the notice I described when we send the letter over. Here's what you did. Here's the factual base that shows what your violations were. We need you to correct it. Here's what you actually specify for the citizen exactly what they need to do to come into compliance. So it's not, it shouldn't be a mystery for them. You don't want it to be. And then you give them a time period to do it, open for any questions if they have any, and here's the consequences if you don't do it. And we also put in the appeals process for post-hearing.
Okay, no, thank you for that, because I was reading through the language and I thought, well, wait, we're saying that each and every day is going to be a separate violation, but we haven't provided notice yet, but then you've explained the process, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you for those questions. Yeah, to me, I mean, obviously, the goal here in doing all of this is not to collect a fine. It's to cure the issue. And to have something enforceable, then, you know, that puts the city and its employees in a position to cure whatever the issue may be. And I think that's, to me, that's the ultimate goal here. So it's amazing how, you know, when you're in third grade or when you're in your 50s, if you kind of want to get away with something and you just ignore it and think nobody's going to complain about it, it's the same process. We just got older and we do it with bigger toys. And it's amazing that the compliance level seemed pretty high. You know, sort of that first contact, it was in the 80 percentile. So that tells me right away that, you know, when people are told you have this issue, this problem, there's been complaints, you need to do this to remedy it, okay. I think that's going to be, you know, the course. And again, yes, there's that 1% to 2% that's out there that, you know, they're not going to do it no matter what the issue is, no matter how they're told and by whom. And I get that part too. So thank you for putting all of this together, the staff and yourself, Mr. Smith. This is really great. And we're going to go ahead and open this up for public comment and see if there's any comments. Mr. Barrich.
I would like to hear Mr. Smith speak about how possibly Cotati can enforce its city council code of conduct that is violated on a regular basis. That code of conduct was established in 2009, and I've personally seen some 12 or so complaints come forward to the city that have been stonewalled or buried. And I have no idea how many other complaints were out there lodged against the city council where nothing has ever been done that I know of. How the city of Sonoma handles their code of conduct. And when people come forward and those complaints are buried, what the code enforcement officer does. Do citations go out? How is this handled? I would also like to hear about how weed abatement is handled in Sonoma, because it's old news now that the city of Cotati has a hands-off approach about our lengthy and comprehensive weed abatement code ordinance, that they want to take no responsibility for code enforcement. We have city council members with high weeds in their own backyards, and how these code enforcement officers handle the political nastiness or messiness where city council members are part of the 2% that won't do anything about it. Because this is a politically charged issue where favoritism and cover-up can be the name of the game, and how Sonoma handles it. Now, I've heard Mr. Smith's presentation from before. He seems like a very, very qualified and intelligent individual. But this is where we get down where we meet the road here. Rubber meets the road. Because we've had enough of the city council's cover-up. We're in the high weed season, in the middle of a heat wave, and we have public and private property throughout this town that is ready to go up in a firestorm with the light of a match, and how all his efforts are going to be used and come to some good in this town after many of us citizens have complained over and over again that you cannot willy-nilly ignore the laws of this town because it's politically not politically expedient for you to be sending out letters to some of your campaign supporters.
All right, thank you very much for your comments. And seeing no one else with public comment, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council for further discussion. Bless you.
Mayor DeLasso, if I may.
Please.
Ask another question of staff.
Yep.
Regarding complaints, is the enforcement only going to be acted upon if we receive a complaint, or if if the code enforcement officer happens to see a violation in public?
So right now we primarily operate on a complaint basis. Obviously, if something egregious is happening that he or one of us notices, then that could potentially be the start of a process. That being said, once he mentioned that there's some pending cases that have been around, and that's the first priority if this gets approved, is to kind of tackle all those old cases and get through that. But then it would probably be a good point at that time to have a discussion about, as a community, are there certain areas that we want to target? But that'll be a subsequent discussion. If there's certain projects or programs that we want to do in the code enforcement arena.
Okay, so it's not limited to just complaints from citizenry.
That's correct. I mean, it's fully discretionary how much or how little we enforce. That's just the way code enforcement programs are in Cotati or any other place.
Right.
It's discretionary.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for that question. Any questions further, Councilmember Harvey? No? Councilmember Lim and Vice Mayor? Wow. All right. We're all anxiously awaiting to put this to the test, potentially, if we vote on it here. To me, this, again, seems like the absolutely right approach, and I think, it would behoove us to move this forward. So with that, I would accept a motion to introduce an ordinance.
I'd like to move that we introduce an ordinance to amend the municipal code to add additional administrative tools to better address quality of life issues for our residents.
Second. Oh, it's okay. You can take it.
Neither of you finished saying the word second, so somebody has to finish that.
Second.
There it is. I was waiting for that other syllable. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Please show a 5-0 vote in favor to move this forward, and thank you all for putting this together. This is great.
Thank you.
All right, now we are at item 12B, which is the master fee schedule updates and changes. City Manager.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So as you recall, last year we went through the process of to try to make our fee schedules, these are fees for services, for city services, try to make our fee schedules more just easy to use for our customers, because we had several different fee schedules for different, basically more departmental type charges. And so we consolidated them all into one place so that they're easy to find on our website for customers. And last year we did that, which was a great change. And then as part of that program, the plan was once a year, right around the start of the fiscal year, we would come back and just update anything that needed to be updated. Maybe if there's new ordinances added and there's new fees associated with things that we add by ordinance, potentially, it would be another opportunity to kind of annually update it in a more systematic and kind of normal process rather than throughout the year at different times. So that's the background. And the schedule that's before you tonight has some suggested changes. With that being said, though, I'm recommending tonight that we just open the public hearing and then continue the item, take any public comment and continue the item on this one. And that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
That was more brief than I realized. Okay. Do we have any comments for the city manager? Any questions? Yes, Councilmember Harvey.
I noticed that there were a few items that have been lined out. Is that because they're covered somewhere else, or they're not needed anymore, or was not? I think there was a grading plan check and inspection, and then there was some police ones also that were lined out. I just was wondering.
Yeah, so those are often just redundant or no longer, they're included in a different fee,
Okay.
that part. Just as, you know, when we took all these different fee schedules and put them all together, it's just inevitable that there's some overlap that just needs to continue to be clarified.
It's just not necessarily obvious that they're redundant, but thank you.
Right.
All right, Councilmember Moore, any questions? Nope. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Mr. Barrich?
Council, Mrs. Harvey asked a very pertinent question about the parts of this ordinance that's been redacted. I don't know how you can vote on this not knowing what exactly was blacked out. So Mrs. Harvey asked a very good question, but in my opinion, it's not okay. She and the rest of the city council needs to see what was blacked out and compare it to what is being offered. If I take your point correctly, that you would like to see what was taken out or where it was moved someplace else. Very good question. That's all my comment. I think you need a little more discussion on that.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, and I will leave this public hearing open and we'll continue it till the next meeting. And are there,
If I
yes,
may make
back
a
to
comment,
council?
I believe that it wasn't a redaction, but it was a strikeout, so that you could see the information in there. So there's nothing redacted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure. Any further questions or comments from council? All right, and again, this will come back to us at our next meeting. So we will now go to item 13, regular agenda. We've already done A, so we are now at item B, which is receive informational report on the proposed groundwater extraction fee to be considered by the Groundwater Sustainability Agency Board and provide direction to the city's GSA board member. And I think I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Scott.
Mayor, members of the council, Craig Scott, City Public Works Director and City Engineer. So yes, the item tonight is there's an upcoming meeting Thursday of the Groundwater Sustainability Board for adopting putting a fee framework into place and regulating the groundwater extractors in the Santa Rosa groundwater plain. Just for some background, so the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act was passed back in 2014, and it required agencies that were over medium or high groundwater basins based on some different criteria, including population, to form groundwater sustainability agencies by June of 2017. So in this region, the water suppliers got together, but it's agencies. I do have a PowerPoint on this that would help at this point, but agencies organized and actually did form the agency back in June 17th. This prevented the state from coming in and imposing fees on us. So there were a big, justification for this or impetus was that, hey, we want to continue to manage our groundwater basin locally and not have it done remotely through in Sacramento. So the one before that is the organization, and just there's a board of directors of agencies overlying the groundwater basin that have land use and water supply authority, and then there's staff and consultants and those expenses. And then there's an advisory committee also to have representation across all the stakeholders for the basin. Okay, so almost from the get-go, from June 2017, the staff, the administration of the agency went about to get a fee developed, to develop a fee, because we were kind of on borrowed time. The initial JSP, Joint Powers Authority, that this agency was formed under, had the member agencies make a contribution to sustain it for the first 2 years. There were grant money, $1 million grant achieved that helped, spread out the costs, but it's riding on the member contributions. And for the city of Cotati, it was $119,000, which was equal to Santa Rosa's and the water agency, all these different agencies. This whole effort to develop a fee has been going on for about the 2 years now, and it's culminating in this board meeting on Thursday. And this is the agenda for it, just kind of it's kind of small, but there's a number of items that are surrounding that decision. Okay, so there's the first item, which is saying, hey, we need to pass an ordinance that gives us the legal authority to impose a fee and to conduct a well registration program. So that's what that first bullet is. It's just, here's this ordinance, so we have a code that allows us to do this. And then the second one up there, 6B, is to say, hey, here's a study that evaluated all these different methods of imposing a fee. This is the one we're honing in on. It's the one that's most equitable, most legally justified, and and is going to be the basis of our fee, basically. So that's item B. It's all kind of building up, right? And then C is the resolution to actually establish the fee. Just like, hey, we've got this authority, here's this report, that's all the justification for it, it's all approved, and then finally, here's the resolution imposing the fee. And so that's what the board is intent on doing on Thursday. It's been leading up to this point. It's critical to the existence of this agency, really, because without funding, where's it going to be? And so we've got the first 2 years with the intent to have the member agency's contribution to get paid back, and this fee is to round out the first phase, which is 5 years from the inception to when the GSP, the Groundwater Sustainability Plan, gets adopted, okay, which is another regulatory deadline. And so at that point, we would then say, hey, here's the plan, here's all the projects. We can reevaluate the fee for the next phase of this agency. Okay, so for the city of Cotati, the annual fee, we're a municipal pumper, so if you look into the fee study, which is included in the staff report, our fee will be based on a 5-year rolling average of our actual pumpage, and which is 264 acre feet for the current 5-year period, and that's on page 164 of the packet, times the there's a unit cost of running the agency per acre foot. And that number was derived by taking the total cost of the agency to run it minus the grant funding, and then divide that by the estimated annual groundwater extraction. So that's $19.90 per acre foot. And so our fee is $5,254, basically per year. And then following page 164 of the report, it it goes through the different estimates for the different user categories in our basin. So you've got the municipal pumpers, and that's easy because our pumpage is metered. And for the other users, the agricultural, commercial users in the basin, there's certain usage factors based on crop type and applied to certain acreage. And then for the rural residential, there's a number of studies that were looked at, and they arrived at half an acre foot per acre per year, something like 450 gallons a day, and that was presented in that report. So the idea, the basis of the premise of the fee is that you're providing a nexus between the benefit this agency provides and to that property. Because then if you have an estimated groundwater use, well, there's your nexus. They're benefiting because they're pumping, they're using the basin. Okay. So those items that we talked about is what the board's going to be considering. We have our board member representative, Susan Harvey, and we're to inform her, advise her, give her some direction on these items. Outside of this, and I think this is important to say, hey, the fee is one thing. Outside of it, the county sort of had this proposed funding mechanism. So they're independently saying, hey, we can pay for the fee bills, the assessment for the rural residential. And what it turned out to be is they're going to pay for the next 3 years for everybody except the municipal pumpers. Okay, and the way that's the reason I say it's separate is because the fee would move forward with or without that proposal from the county. That's kind of taking care of their own business. But the board does have an opportunity to weigh in on that option. And the money is that they've approved is $240,000 annually for those groups, with the county providing $200,000 from their county contingency fund, and then Sonoma Water would provide $40,000 annually, with 2/3 of it coming from their general fund and 1/3 coming from their water transmission fund. And within that amount, that includes their groundwater pumpage fee. So they have a few wells, not a lot, and so that'll be multiplied by the $19.90 per acre foot, and that'll come out of their contribution. I know you have a lot of information, Susan, that you might want to share, so I just wanted to frame up this item for the discussion. There's a lot more technical details in here, but this is kind of the main points, that this is what the agency was set out to do 2 years ago, and we have the agency developed a fee that staff recommends moving forward with. It's equitable, and it's legally defensible, and so that's what we recommend. So with that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much. Would you like to say something now? And I guess I'd like a question answered, and that is, why do you keep getting on these groups that cost the city so much money? Is there a theme? I'm just curious.
She's the right person for that.
She could be. She could be. But with that, that's your lead-in. That's your lead-in, please.
I fought hard because originally when this all came down, what Craig didn't say is the other two basins, they decided to continue with the contribution method. And for us, that's a big deal. That was a big hit. And we talked about that more than once, that we just couldn't continue that, you know, we said that the first 2 years, all right, we'll contribute our equal share, but, you know, that agency needs to be self-sufficient. You know, the people that are using it need to pay for themselves. And so I fought pretty hard for that, because twice, a year ago and then earlier this year, we got the, oh, well, don't we think that, why don't we just, you know, go back to the same people and have them do contributions again? And I'm like, no, we said no a year ago, and we said no again in the beginning of this year. We, you know, said it would be self-sufficient. We cannot continue that way. After I made a big deal about it, then others kind of, you know, said, oh, yeah, we, you know. But it was like, you can't, just because you asked a different day doesn't mean you're going to get a different answer. I think that a couple of people were betting on the fact that some players had changed because of elections and things, that maybe, you know, we'll try again because it's a different group. So we got here because it, as Craig said, it's appropriate for people that are pumping groundwater to share in this. It's not something we made up. It's not something that we asked for. I mean, I certainly, personally, could be using my time doing other things rather than these meetings are pretty long meetings. But it's important that we have this plan, and it's been mandated, and, you know, we will move forward with that. I'll draw your attention to page 171. Craig alluded to, you know, the fee and the pumping and all of that. In our packet is a little bit better chart than this one, but basically if you look down the line, each of the cities, there's an amount in there, and that will be based upon the fee if we implement it. That would be ours. So what we're saying is, we're instituting the fee, this is our amount. Even though we've already paid a lot, and even though ultimately we will get paid that money, I think it behooves us to invest this amount for the next 3 years to get us to our plan. It's the amount, I think, is commensurate with what's going on.
That figure is an annual fee.
It's an annual fee for the next 3 years, and as Craig alluded to it, depending upon what the plan is, will dictate what the administration of the plan is, and therefore if there's any projects, any improvements that need to be made, is it just, you know, doing the reporting that's required? There is reporting that's required on all the, so it might be really, really tiny, and it might be really, really big, but we won't know until the plan's done. And again, that will need to be self-sufficient. But Craig alluded to the fact that, you know, the cities, so the cities, if you think of it this way, the cities are starting to pay their fees starting in July. The county, because of the comments that were made by some number of people that came and lobbied with them, and the fact that they are paying to fund for the next 3 years in the other two basins, they decided, well, wait, this is the biggest one, you know, maybe we should be, you know, funding. So our representatives did go back to the Board of Supervisors and say, hey, maybe we should be funding, because if you kind of look at this chart, you don't see the County of Sonoma on here. So if this would have been instituted in this way and, you know, been on people's bills, the county would not have gotten one. Anyways, so if you start on the Sonoma water line, Craig alluded to the fact that they're paying their amount, and they have 592 acre feet, so theirs is going to be roughly $11,000, you know, almost $12,000 a year. Everything past that, Sonoma State University, Larkfield, small water providers, the agriculture, the rural residential, the urban residential, golf courses, school, all that, that is the money that the county is ponying up so that the fees are instituted, but they are going to pay those on their behalf for the next 3 years. So that, you know, so it's an interesting way of doing it, and, you know, I think it works. You know, I certainly can agree to that and feel better about that than paying an equal share, which is what we were paying. If you will recall, we paid $55,000 the first year and $64,000 the second year. So in my mind, $5,200 for the next 3 years seems reasonable.
Can I ask a question before you go on?
Yes.
So those, the 55 and 64, whatever the two numbers were, those are to be reimbursed?
They are to be reimbursed, and whether or not you remember or not, originally it was going to be reimbursed this year, and they had us come back, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, because again, when they were trying to figure out what the rates would be, that rate of $19.90 per acre foot would have been much higher had all of those contributors been paid back right away. So we said, let's keep these costs down low. It's in the JPA that they need to pay us back. We are not saying they don't have to pay us back. Let's get the plan in place so we know what we're dealing with, and then pay the money back. And everybody is in for the same amount at that point.
Good.
So that, I have not given up on that, and I reiterated that again when this whole, but we still want to be paid back.
Right.
Because it's a
Keep
big
that
deal.
money.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a big deal for us.
Absolutely.
The other thing that Craig talked about that's also important with all of this, and originally the county wanted us to back off on it, and that's the well registration. They wanted to not do that, and it's like, I said, yeah, you got to do it. It's the information, it's the data, it's what makes the numbers right, it's what gets us that detail to be able to move forward, to know what we're dealing with. And quite frankly, in my opinion, I think it's going to take them a while to do it. You know, it's not like this JPA has a bunch of staff. We have a consultant and a couple of people that are administrative staff that are basically doing in kind. So you're not talking about 20 or 30 people that can go register. We're talking 9,000-10,000 wells. So I think it's going to be one of those things where they send it out, and in dwindling amounts, they'll eventually get it. But I said earlier is better. We need the information, and I think it'll take a while to kind of get through everybody. So I kind of pushed pretty hard on the well registration too. So I'm glad to see that is still in here.
So before we open this up for public comment, are there any questions for either Craig or Susan at this point?
And I think, Mark, did Craig answer your question that you asked me last time sufficiently about it coming from the transmission?
Yes.
Okay, because I did call and I did ask and I verified all that. So basically, they are pumping 592 acre foot, and so that's why that part is coming from the transmission, because they're pumping on our behalf. There you go.
Wow, that was a crash course in
Sorry.
groundwater sustainability. No,
You
that
can
was
read-
good.
There's a lot of good stuff in here, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so no further questions for staff at this point in time. Let me go ahead and open the public hearing. If there's any questions or comments, seeing none, I will close that public hearing. Bring it back for any more questions. I do have, I think, maybe more of an esoteric question that may not deserve an answer, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway to see who dares to try to respond to this one. So the whole reason this is going on is there's issues with sustaining the groundwater. It's being pumped up, it's being used for myriad issues. We don't need to get into all the different issues it's being used for. But is there, in this JPA or in this organization, is there any kind of, there's two parts to this, I guess, any kind of limit for use by the different groups, whether it's a jurisdiction or a use like ag or whomever? Is there like an upper limit that could be used, let's say, annually? And if there is, or if there isn't, the goal of this is you're trying not to deplete so much of that groundwater so it can recharge, right? I mean, that's kind of the 30,000-foot goal. And so are there penalties?
Well, let me start with your initial statement, which is a common misconception, because we're termed a medium basin, doesn't mean we have a sustainability problem in our basin. It's like I said before, it was one of the criteria is population. Just population by itself gets us a medium
Right.
category basin. So, and we've had the USGS study completed, and it does show at some point there's some localized depressed areas, but then they've been recovering, and so the health of the basin is pretty healthy. So that's not what it's just this regulatory requirement based on all these criteria that were on the list.
But is that regulatory requirement really monitoring? I think that's kind of the key here, right? That should be the key, in my opinion. Some kind of monitoring of that level.
It will be, and they are putting in monitoring wells. That's part of the reporting that ultimately will have to be done.
But it's just the answer, then a roundabout way to answer your question, there are no limits right now. It's everybody, hey, we just want to know what you're pumping.
So there's no baseline at this point.
And the effort moving forward, it's similar to the AB 3030 Groundwater Management Act. It's hey, we want you guys to all talk together and work together to manage your basin. And so the groundwater sustainability plan is probably going to be heavy on the hey, what can we do to increase the supply, groundwater injection wells, and better understand our basin and put in monitoring wells rather than this punitive, hey, we're going to set this limit for everybody. I mean, it's yet to be seen how it all works out, but right now there is no limit being placed on any of the groundwater users.
See, my concern is that there are these fees and how they're based on, area foot of acre feet of water. There are some, again, either jurisdictions or entities that money is not as big of a deal as preserving that groundwater. So go ahead, I'll pay it. I'm still using, you guys aren't even, I can use as much as I want because here, I got the money and I can pay it. That's just a concern I have. I mean, if you really want to do what you're talking about, because I went to a presentation 2 or 3 years ago now in Roanoke Park on this very topic, and it was a room full of people, and maybe that was kind of the nexus of getting all of this together. I'm not quite sure, but it was pre any kind of state law. I don't know. I just have a little bit of uneasiness about this. If there's really not a long-term goal of, okay, we don't want to deplete it more than, I'm just making up numbers, 60% of the groundwater.
So we will have a plan. It's unclear yet what our plan is. I will tell you that in some of the other areas within California that do have much more severe problems than we have, there are some of the things going on that you're talking about. And they are doing some things, charging more and cutting people off and doing water like exchanges. I'll sell you, I'm not using all mine, I'll sell, stuff like that. As Craig pointed out, I don't think that we're in that situation, but we don't want to get there.
Well, we're not there now. We're not there now.
We're not there now, and we don't want to get there. So it's, you can't, you have to measure what you want to check, and until we can measure it, then we don't know where we're at for sure. And once we are, then we will be able to, just like in our conservation efforts with our surface water, once we know what we have and know where we're at, then we can implement conservation programs, and here's the list of the things that can happen. And, as Craig said, we may put injection wells in, we may put retention basins so there's going to be a whole list of things that will come out of that, but that's what the plan is.
I guess just to be on the judicious side of things, I'd hate to see any one entity or another start to increase their use, and then all of a sudden say 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you have a plan, you go to set limits. Okay, but look, we were here 5, 6 years ago. Now we're up here, so here's our limit. Well, no, that's not necessarily your limit if there's a negative effect. So I don't know. I'm just throwing that stuff out there, and I'm in a skeptical mood, I guess, after the 8 o'clock hour. I don't know. And I'll just pass this around to see what other questions or comments. Councilmember
Well,
Lane.
you can never go wrong being skeptical, or at least a little suspicious. If you look back, it wasn't that many years ago, Roanoke Park was using so much groundwater, they had subsidence occurring in some areas, and we forget the history, but actually we're finally told by, I believe it was a federal judge or it was a state judge, but essentially told by the courts, no more. And that's just a perfect example of this. It is what they're looking for here in the next 3 years is a groundwater sustainability plan. And the idea is our representative told us very clearly, know how much we have. We're starting to have that data now in the last few years from the USGS study. Then know how much you're using. That's part of this. And as you fought for, measuring the wells and knowing. And then finally, once you know all that, then you can put something in place to say, okay, how do we make sure we keep this thing full and don't get back to bottoming it out? And I think this is a really good thing. The recognition that water is valuable to everybody, and it's not the wild, wild west anymore as far as water usage. You look back a few years ago, everybody over by where the casino was eventually built probably wouldn't want anybody to come take a look at their well usage. And as soon as they saw that casino came in, all of a sudden they were very concerned, wow, that's all our groundwater is going to go to this. And that's why you want to know what's in there and how much everybody's using so we can make sure that nobody gets taken advantage of and everybody gets the fair share we have to share of the water that we have here. So with that, I'm really pleased to see how minimal the fees are, too, that you've arrived at working in this group compared to the state. They're markedly less expensive, and I think that was lost a little bit. I know that for some in the county that still seemed this was a change that was difficult, and I fully support the county easing people in if that works. My only concern was making sure that our constituents here weren't paying for that, and that's pretty clear that has been checked. And I thank Councilmember Harvey. I don't think we could have had a better representative to make sure that those things went the way they should go. So I want to thank you for that. Full vote of confidence there. When we say you're the right person for that job is because you'll watch that carefully. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you for those very sage comments. Vice Mayor Skillman, any comments or questions?
I think just as far as providing direction is just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, I absolutely agree. We need to be monitoring the use. We need to be able to have the data to make sure that it is spread fairly, and then also staying on them about reimbursing the money. So I think those are the two main things that I was concerned about, and you've already addressed them. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there'll be also a lot of education because it may not be obvious, but a lot of folks have come out, the rural residential folks. The amount that's being used as an estimate is a half an acre foot, and everybody's, oh, we don't use that. There's no way we use it. We don't, well, there's data that says that people do, but none of those wells, as you point out, are metered. So you really don't know. And then they say, well, but I also, in addition to a well, I have a septic system. So therefore, the water's really not going anywhere because I'm putting it, well, it doesn't kind of work that way. And that's an education piece. I think that people need to understand that, well, I hope you're not, I hope your well isn't going into your septic tank. The wells are usually much deeper and the aquifer is in a different spot. And so that's education, for people. So, and we'll get there on that.
We want to come back to you, too, for any closing comments. Councilmember Moore?
No, I'm dry on this one.
Very good, very good. Cleverness. And then I want to come back. I'd like you to kind of wind it down. So, I mean, you've heard some of my concerns. They're more long-term, and I don't know if anybody's really thinking of that right now. Is it appropriate to be even thinking like that? I think it is. And so I would just suggest for some direction on that part, that when there's a discussion on, what are we really looking for in this planning process, I think some of those questions should at least be asked. And, totally understand and agree with gathering the data. I mean, if you don't have what's being used now, you can't go anywhere. So that's huge. That's a huge step, and I get that. So I totally agree with that. But I'd like to just go ahead and turn it over to you before we make any kind of, are we just giving you direction?
Yeah.
So then just, I'll let you wind down this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be important as the plan progresses that we bring the plan back to the council to see, where we're headed, what's going on. I mean, if nothing else, to educate us as a council so that, we're aware of what's going on. So that is definitely my plan as we get those pieces. I'm very grateful that we have the staff that we have working on this. There's a whole lot of really bright people working on this. As I reported in my last report, I went to a presentation out at Sonoma State on groundwater, and they've got some pretty smart people with a lot of know-how working on this. Our advisory group is also wonderful, so between the staff and the advisory group, and we hit them pretty hard on that, and as an example of that, some of the fine-tuning on these numbers was because people in the advisory group were able to prove some of the numbers, and we were able to change some of the agricultural things because of information and data that they were able to garnish and do a study on.
So can I assume the ag users in the room are like dairy, beef, grapes? Those are probably the big ones?
Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Are there others? I mean, there must be small crops,
Small.
stuff like that?
Small farm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I think you
So
got the
can
general.
I, given those things, I can't even read that. It's so small. So the first one is.
Excuse me, Mayor, I'm sorry if I missed it, but did we do public comment yet?
No.
You know public comment?
Just before we wrap it up for a night?
I did.
Go for it.
You want me to open it
Okay,
again? Do
I
you have anything?
apologize. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did open and there was no
Oh.
comment. Do I need to open it again? No?
No?
I will.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, so the action items on that
Thanks,
agenda.
because I can't see.
The first item, so we're looking at 6A through C, I believe. So 6A is groundwater usage fee and registration program, and it's adopting an ordinance requiring the registration of groundwater use facilities and water use reporting and authorizing the adoption of the groundwater sustainability fee. That's item 6A. 6B is the rate study report by Reftelis, and its acceptance and approval of the report as the baseline for the fee. And then finally, 6C is establishing the groundwater fee itself. So that's I think those are the action items that our Representative Susan Harvey will be voting on, that we're looking for direction for tonight.
Right. So do we have, I think we've given pretty
Mr.
clear
Mayor,
direction.
I'd like to suggest we give a direction to follow as discussed tonight, as well as the authority, if necessary, to adjust it with any changes that might occur at the last minute, if that sounds good to you.
Yeah, do we see nodding? All 5 members are nodding yes, so there you go for direction.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your efforts.
Have
seriously.
fun on Thursday.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely be thinking about you. I'm not sure that came out sincerely or not, but let's move on to item 13C, which is adoption of a resolution approving the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget. And I will turn that over to Angela.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So in light of our really light budget book that's been included in your packets, we've provided a presentation which will keep it in a much briefer format for you. So this is again for our 1920 fiscal year budget. And I'd like to start off on the next slide where we're just going over that this really isn't, even though it's a budget document that's included in your packet, it really is a process that goes for the whole year for the city. So starting even 6 months back is when this started, where we coordinated with admin services in the city manager's office to really schedule out how we're going to meet our objectives in order to get to this point, to get our final budget adopted. And then along the way, it's also the coordination with council at our strategic planning sessions and coordination with each of the department heads to make sure that we're meeting those strategic objectives and meeting the requirements that each department needs to fill out the city services that we'd like to provide our citizens. So during the budget study sessions, I would just like to go over, so starting in March, we had our strategic planning sessions where we developed our objectives and our budget focus. And then following in April, we covered the general fund, including the revenues, expenditures, transfers, ins, the special revenue funds, the capital projects, and internal service funds. It's a long night. May 7th, we went over the enterprise funds for water, sewer, and those specific capital projects for the enterprise funds. And tonight, we'll just go over how these all came together into one big budget book and any of the changes that might have happened since then. During that strategic planning session, it was decided that really our objectives for our citywide focus for our budget were to be on the community and providing the clear information of where our city government is going and what we do, and providing that to our city and promoting opportunities for community engagement. We're also going to focus on infrastructure, maintaining the existing infrastructure and continuing the strategic improvements through utilization of grants, and economic development, which is really supporting our existing businesses and creating key opportunities to ensure revenue growth into the future. So here's a quick economic recap. We have a further detail on packet page 197 and 198 within the city manager's report that really goes more into depth into how the overall national government economics, what's going on nationally, and then in the state, as well as what's happening locally here in Sonoma County and the city of Cotati. But in summary, really, the U.S. economic outlook, while it's still growing, it's becoming more and more uncertain with the, primarily due to international trade issues. We're just at unstable uncertainty in the marketplace. However, we do still have continued job growth, but it's slower than anticipated. And the California economy overall is still looking to grow through 2019, even in this uncertain times. So you'll see on the other side is our unemployment rate. This is as of April. The U.S. economy, the unemployment rate has decreased, and you get down all the way to Sonoma County where we're still decreasing in our unemployment rate, but at a much slower rate than the overall U.S. economy. So our general fund, really our focus with the strategic plan is really engaging the community and focusing on that economic development. On packet page 235, you'll see an overall summary of the general fund, of the revenues and expenditures. The highlights of that being that we still have a net operating surplus of $1.2 million with a conservative operating revenue of $8.1 million and operating expenses of $6.8 million. And you'll have further detail on subsequent slides for those for that information. The capital projects, we're going to be funding approximately $2.9 million in capital projects from the general fund, and this is going to help us leverage approximately $1.1 million in grants so that they will get those directly contributed to those projects because we have those matching general fund revenues. And we're also going to be maximizing our special revenue funds in order to support our streets programs. Our ending general fund balance is projected to be around $4.8 million, which is a 71% of the operating reserve, which our minimum requirement is the 25%. So our general fund operating revenues. So our key focus here for revenues is we want to plan appropriately, but also be conservative because we, again, aren't sure where the economy's going, and so we want to plan accordingly. So know what to expect without over-exaggerating what we want. So want doesn't play into this. So we do have a decrease in sales tax in 18-19, and that was due to higher receipts in 18-19 because of true-ups and adjustments that happened for 17-18. So it's just a lagging effect. So it looks like 18-19 has decreased, but it's actually just because we had excess revenues in 18-19. We have the cannabis tax for one permit, the SSU agreement, and our development fees are only taking into account the Kessing Ranch development. So our operating expenditures, these are for items that are affecting each of the departments within the general fund. So I want to go over those in highlights and then go into further detail for each department, what's really causing the changes and different budget differences for those ones. So overall, we do have within our personnel costs, all of our departments, we're budgeting at full staff for our FTE. And we do have one new full FTE for an administrative assistant within the city manager's office. All of the personnel costs include the MOUs that have been adopted to date. So that's all up to date, including any of the COLA adjustments or anything that are already in MOUs that have been adopted. We are including the full lump sum payment to PERS, which reduces our overall cost for the PERS payment. So we do that in an annual lump sum in order to mitigate that cost of the monthly payments. We also have a distribution of $126,000 to our compensated absences fund, which is a new process. Our contract services have increased due to identification of more contract services as well as the adjustments in our FTEs. Our utilities costs, we have included the $12,000 for the possible conversion to the Evergreen, as well, and then our repairs and maintenance, we've included $150,000 for our distribution for the vehicle repairs and replacement fund. That's okay. Good. There, yeah. Yeah, no, it's all good. So here's just seeing it on the departmental level of where each department is compared from the 18-19 estimated actuals and the proposed budget. And again, these take into consideration all those highlighted items that just change. The personnel costs are at, again, full employment versus the 18-19, where we do have some positions that are open and being advertised currently. So they are not included in the estimated year end because they're not being paid for right now. So a little bit more into the detail of the department changes. And this is really just going into the departments where we've had a change where it's an increase from our estimated 18-19. So these are ones that are increased from there. So the city manager's office, we have the continued inclusion of the economic development department. We have a new position as described before as the administrative assistant. And we have overall the net increase is due to the allocation of the indirect costs as we continue to identify more contract services that really are allocated contract services that should be applied across citywide departments. The administrative services department has increased because we have a vacant senior accountant position as well as an intern position. We also have an increase for the capital outlay request for an office refresh and the reclassification of our fiscal fees, which currently we're netting against revenues, which really should be grossed out to be a separate expense item as opposed to net against the revenues. The community development department, we are hiring for a vacant director position, and we have, again, the reclassification of permanent expenditures from the other expenses to that contract services. So it's really just an expense movement within the same budget. Again, there's packet page items that are referenced on there. I'm sorry if I didn't explain. So those are on packet page 247 to 250. And then the police departments are packet page 252 to 253. So the police services, we have continued investment in technology services through the Public Safety Consortium. We have purchases of additional body cameras and docking stations in order to efficiently, effectively have body cameras for each officer. And then included is the increased insurance and recruiting, small and other miscellaneous expenses. Overall increases for recreation are the annual software for the rec desk and the insurance, again, other allocated insurance and banking fees, since now they're doing more events, more venues. The rec desk is being used more, which just has more fees. Yeah.
So I just wanted to actually interject one thing since she mentioned the word insurance, and so that's my trigger word. I can say something. So I just wanted to we had a discussion about this earlier in the year, I believe, in one of the council reports, not really discussion, just a quick recap of what's going on at REMIF, our insurer. And so they insure one of our health insurance programs, as well as our property insurance and our auto insurance. And on the health insurance, it's basically flat, which is good. Auto is essentially flat as well, but property insurance has seen huge increases. And it has nothing to do with the city of Cotati. It's the issue that the insurers are running into is worldwide they're dealing with extreme weather events that are causing massive property loss. And so they are increasing globally property insurance rates. And so ours is, I mean, for REMIF, it's something like, I think, close to a 50% increase. It's pretty large. So I just wanted to let everyone know that that's a component of this that runs through not only Cotati, but all the cities, and really anyone that has property insurance.
And that's a really good point, because that is something that is increasing so much, and because police is a significant portion of our FTE, and that is how our insurance is allocated. So that is the outlier for police, is because our insurance did increase for that component. They have the largest FTE. FTE is how it's allocated, and so that ends up being a piece of that. So lastly, the expenses and other income for the general funds come primarily from transfers in and transfers out. The transfers in are the public safety special revenues that get transferred in to cover for our police safety costs. We're estimating again $160,000, which is consistent with prior years. And the transfers out from the general fund are for the capital projects as outlined on packet page 309. The capital projects funds, which are all generated from capital or from general funds as well as special revenue funds, are totaling $2.5 million. The grants fund is $333,000, which is going to have approximately $1 million in grants matching. And then the CDBG fund, we're going to be transferring $72,000, which is going to have approximately $167,000 in grants matching. So segue into the capital projects, which again is focusing on our infrastructure in order to beautify our city. So the grants projects for the upcoming 1920 fiscal year are the School Street Pathway, which is a CDBG grant, the Wayfinding Pedestrian Program for the bicycle and pedestrians, the East Cotati School Street Paving Project, and the Park Equipment Update, each provided by, you can see, different grant programs. The other city projects, as provided under our other capital project plans, for our parks, we're going to be performing the Rhonda Folletti building improvements. The streets, we have many streets projects happening this year. The road paving maintenance and repair, citywide traffic safety improvements we're going to continue to invest in, the Old Redwood Highway traffic flow improvements, the design for that, and the citywide entry signage, the monument signage. The buildings, the last piece, which is the Civic Center roof and refurbishments and other improvements for the Civic Center. And there's further detail on each one of these individual projects within the packet book. So after our capital projects, we have our special revenue funds, which are on packets page 267 to 284. So these are really legally restricted funds. They have to be used for a special purpose. And the different departments that service each one of these special revenue funds. It goes further in detail onto each one of those, and there's a summary of the expenditures and revenues on packet page 232 if you really want to see all of the special revenues in a single area, what's the total expenses, what the fund balance is, and how they're being allocated. But overall, we're looking at how the special revenue funds are funding our capital projects for the next fiscal year. And again, a majority of it is going into that streets construction and improvements for a total of $437,000, as well as the traffic mitigation is going, citywide traffic safety, I got ahead of myself, for $25,000. The Old Redwood Highway traffic flow improvements, again, is coming from the traffic mitigation fund for $160,000, and the flooding building improvements, which is a part of our Park and Lieu fund, for approximately $210,000. So overall, our special revenue funds are going to be funding a big part of our capital improvement projects for the next fiscal year at $832,000. Our internal service funds, we have the vehicle maintenance and replacement fund and the compensated absence funds on packet page 286 and 287. So as a big part of this budget year, the 1920 budget year, is going to be the actual costing of the vehicles repairs and maintenance in order to resurface these, replace the vehicles on an ongoing basis going forward, and making sure that there's decent funding there to replace vehicles going forward. And so that is a part of a mechanism of billing the general fund as well as enterprise funds and the users of these vehicles in a fleet management system to get, so moving those funds and revenues over to these internal service funds to be able to repair and replace the vehicles as needed. And it correlates directly with how the compensated absences fund is going to be functioning as well, where we will be billing out the balances due for compensated absences to the general fund and enterprise funds for the balances of compensated absences for the current staffing. Last but not least, we have our enterprise funds, which focus on our infrastructure again and maintaining our community safety. So for our enterprise funds, we're going to continue to maintain the 33% operating expense reserve. But we know it's in line with our rate study, and our fund balance is expected to decrease, and our general reserve will be closely monitored, and we are evaluating that on an ongoing basis to make sure that we are exceeding our minimum reserve and managing that general reserve in addition to that. Our proposed rate change have been included within the proposed budget, and that rate change is going to be effective June 15th. The connection fee and revenue estimates are only, again, based on the Kessing Ranch development. And we're going to continue to preserve our infrastructure and strategically plan out any improvements and preservation for our infrastructure. And this does include, like I stated before, that funding to the internal service funds, and it does include the $5,000 possible conversion to the Evergreen. So our water fund, briefly, as I stated, has the connection fees for Kessing Ranch. Again, it's packet page 290, I believe, and 293 to 296. We have the capital project improvements for the design phase of the Cypress tank and main replacement, the water SCADA system and the chlorination equipment replacement. The changes in the operating expenditures for 1920 are the payments to the compensated absences fund and vehicle replacement fund, increase in the allocated contract services. It's similar to the general fund, where I just identified more contract services that really are applicable citywide and should be allocated citywide. And so that has led to an increase in those. We have a new professional contract services agreement for a water financial plan, including the update for the ADU programs and the increased water conservation programs. So again, reaching more out to the community for those conservation programs. The sewer fund highlights, the connection fees, again, are just for Kessing Ranch. Our capital improvement programs for next year are the manhole lateral repair and improvement, which is going to help hopefully alleviate some of the stormwater and other penetration from going into the sewer system, and the sewer SCADA system. Changes in our operating expenditures for 1920 are, again, I'd like to just reiterate that we plan on conservative revenues, but at the same time, we also plan on conservative expenditures So making sure that we're planning for what costs could be without overstating and just planning appropriately for that. So in line with our rate study, we've increased the sewer treatment costs in line with what our historical increases have been. We've had a payment to the Compensated Absences Fund and Vehicle Replacement Fund, and an increase in the contract services, including the contract service for our infrastructure mapping program, not program, system. So in conclusion, this is our proposed 1920 budget. I know it's a hefty lift, but it really does prioritize the community, the infrastructure, and our focus on economic development. It really is a balanced and sustainable budget for the next fiscal year, and we're going to continue to monitor it and make sure that we are making the fiscally prudent decisions that need to be made and that are in line with this budget document. And I'd like to close it out there and take any comments.
All right, thank you for that presentation. So before we go out for public comment, do we have any questions on any sections? No, and
No questions.
no. You?
No questions.
No questions. And no questions.
Don't want to jinx it.
No questions. I feel like I should just make a couple up just to be that way, but I won't for now. Yeah, we've certainly discussed, we've had, as Angela mentioned earlier, you know, the goal setting and then a couple of budget meetings with public input. So things look good. That's the important part. First thing I usually do every year on the budget is I go to that bottom line figures, like where are we and what are we carrying over? That's a good number. It's always in black. That's the important part. And we're now, what, 11 years running with a balanced budget?
I think this would be 12.
12? This will be 12.
Last year it said 11 years.
That's excellent. All right, cool. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing and see if there's any comments from anyone. Mr. Barrich.
Over the years, Cotati's had financial directors who've worked for the city and helped prepare the budgets. We've seen many financial directors come and go under questionable circumstances, quitting, being fired, and if you've spoken to any of them, some of them said they just couldn't do things to the budget that the city manager wanted them to do, especially Diane Thompson, but I digress. I looked at this budget, and once again, there's no mention in this budget of unfunded liabilities. It's not in the glossary of terms. I bring it up in each budget meeting. And as many cities around the country are dealing with unfunded liabilities, Cotati is one of those that just keeps kicking the can down the road and refuses to address that issue. We know that our city streets, we cannot repair our city streets at the rate that our streets are deteriorating. So we've got a master plan on how we're going to chuck and jive the citizenry on how we're going to fix the streets. There's no funds in the budget for replacing City Hall, which is a disaster. It's not earthquake retrofit and is unsafe for people to be in this building. I don't like to be here any longer than I ever need to be. We are still paying off a $21 million police station, which includes interest over 30 years, at approximately $800 and some odd thousand per year. I think we're at year 15 right now. We got another 15 years to go on the police station for some 20 officers. We have no funds in the budget for weed abatement enforcement. How about that? No wonder REMF is raising up our property rates some 2%. Take a ride around this town, see all the high weeds. Yeah, we're high risk city. Not a dime for the homeless, not even a discussion, not even an agenda item to discuss. But you have funds for attorneys to fight our police officers who have been injured on the job, who have submitted legitimate claims for disability benefits and medical treatment, and you're fighting them on that. We have lots of documents on that. A lot of that's going to be coming forward to you. I really hope that you would go ahead and do that research yourself. It's really a travesty, these budgets that the city puts forward. Overinflated, anticipated city revenues, overinflated or underinflated future expenditures that the city is going to be facing in the future. And the joke goes on.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this topic? All right, seeing no one, I will go ahead and close the public hearing. I know one thing to point out, we've been discussing this for several months now, that in this year's budget, I believe it's $2.1 million for streets. Is that an accurate or close figure?
I think all in, it's about 3.3 million.
Even 3.3 million for street improvements, and then 1.5 million for each of the next 4 years. So that's about $9 million in street improvements in the next 5 years. I'm not sure I'd consider that kicking the can down the road, and there's never enough, but when you make improvements, you raise the level of the streets to being improved. That's the point that's being made. There isn't one city, show it to me, and I would be surprised, who's probably putting equivalent to about 30% of their general fund dollars, equivalent amount, to street improvements. Not one city, not one city. I am not discussing this with you right now. You had your chance. Thank you. So with that, I'd like to know if there's any questions or comments for the staff report. I'll start with Councilmember Harvey. She raised her hand.
Thank you. Before I get to that, I just would like to point out that there is a lot of information about the unfunded liabilities on in the budget on page 137, on the packet page 332. Sorry, my eyes are. Anyways, it is discussed in there. Just to point that out so you can see that. I want to thank the staff for this for a couple of reasons. One, it's in here multiple ways. There is the nitty-gritty, line-by-line budget things and budget kind of technique, which I like, the line-by-line, but there's also then visual aids and verbiage and pictures and things like that that puts it in more a layman's term. So I really appreciate where we've come on that. So there's multiple ways that you can slice and dice and look at this to explain it, down to simple things like, where does your dollar go in property taxes, and it's a visual of a dollar and, where all the pieces go. So I want to thank staff for that. It's very helpful to be able to show that kind of information to folks. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councilmember Harvey. Councilmember Moore, any questions or comments?
No, I think it's pretty comprehensive. It's great that we're looking at conservative projections because we never know what's going to happen with the economy. No, I think it's a nice little packet. The only one question I did have is you talked about refresh in one of the line items regarding capital improvements. Were you talking about refresh in some of the community rooms?
Yeah, so that was administrative services office. I don't know if you've, but in there we have our water and sewer customers come in and our carpet's gotten pretty tore up and it just needs a paint, little just kind of repairs and maintenance that's been a little bit deferred. So just a little refresh of the office's hallway area, just here in City Hall.
That was a specific reference I think you're thinking of, but there's also the close to $500,000 for the Civic Center upgrades. Yeah, roofing and related improvements. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go with Councilmember Landman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, a few points and then maybe a comment. Let's see, this has been mentioned many times, and I know we've discussed it, but maybe it's been a year, so it should be mentioned again. A lot of talk about weed abatement. Rancho Adobe does weed abatement, so unsurprisingly, weed abatement isn't in our budget. Number two, it's been mentioned that we might not have enough roads or we don't have enough to keep up with them or something else that sounds very terrifying. But actually the interesting thing, besides the obvious, clear, heavy amount we're investing in it, the roadmap we have in 5 years, if we can keep to it, and this is the challenge, but if we can, we get to a point of very low level and relatively inexpensive maintenance that, 80% of cities, 90% of cities in this state rarely get to. That's a significant goal, and we're on the path to that. So just had to put that out there. And finally, if City Hall wasn't safe, we sure wouldn't be meeting in it. At least most of us. You're welcome to if you'd like. So I guess the big story for me, I look at this having been here 10 years and remembering different times. I'm really pleased. I would challenge anyone to find another city that's investing this heavily in local infrastructure while maintaining such a strong and prudent reserve. It just really strikes me that we're planning for the future, and this budget really shows that, and that's a good thing. We've seen a lot. We've seen different places and different times, and where we're at now and where we've all got to together with this community support is a much better place, and you can see that in this budget too. So thank you for that presentation. It was very good.
All right, thank you very much. Vice Mayor Skillman.
Just a quick comment. My gosh, apparently I need more water. Just in case people missed it because they dove right into the numbers, I appreciated that you had included on packet page 187 and 189 the awards that the City of Cotati has gotten from the Government Finance Officers Association and the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers. Now, I did not realize that you could get awards, and that's just my own personal ignorance. So I'm happy to know that we have not one but two independent agencies that have looked at our budget and have granted us an award. And I just think that's something that really needs to be emphasized, that it's not just us sitting up here saying, wow, look, we're really spending responsibly. It's actually outside people that are saying we're doing a good job. And your public comment is over. And everybody who wanted to be considered for the award paid a fee in order to be considered for the award. And yet, we were one of the ones that actually won of all of the cities that, yeah. All right. So, I guess apparently the heat's gotten to all of us this evening. So, 2 days of heat wave, and we're all a little bit shorter fused. So, anyway, I'll end it there. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. I tend to be one of those people who my eyes glaze over when I start looking at budget numbers, and so I really appreciate what Councilmember Harvey was saying too about how it's written out in different ways, so that it makes it easier to understand. So thank you for making it more digestible for those of us who are not money people. Appreciate it.
But those of us that do like to look at numbers and budgets, it was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So there. I think I agree with one of the statements that Councilmember Harvey made about the narrative. I think that's really important. And I know the last few years that's been included more and more. And I think that does put it more in lay terms than just looking at a whole bunch of numbers. You know, you've got an estimated for last fiscal year, you've got sort of an actual, then you've got this estimate for this year. And it can get a little confusing when you're trying to look at that morass of numbers. And I can see where people can miss a lot of that information too. So the narrative part I think is great, and kudos to everybody at City Hall for doing all of this work and keeping the faith and keep the numbers growing for that sort of that whole rainy day concept that we have, going way beyond. Our policy is 25%. What did you say it was? 71? 71%. That's pretty phenomenal. Again, find me another city that's doing that, and I'll shake their hand. All right. With that, I'd be looking for a motion.
Be pleased to move that we adopt a resolution approving the City of Cotati budget for fiscal year 2019-20.
Second.
2019-2020. I know that's what you meant, but everybody keeps saying 1920, and I keep putting, you didn't say that, and I get this weird flashback.
Picture that pause, that slight pause as a hyphen, and it works.
Thank you, perfect. That's all good. Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah.
Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Please show a 5-0 vote in favor. Again, great job, staff. And we will now dive into item 14, which is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So I think maybe somebody's noticed that there's warm weather outside. And when that happens, there's increased irrigation and increased number of significant leaks in irrigation systems. So the city does offer a leak credit program for customers that have the aberration and need help. But we also offer, maybe even more importantly, a leak alert program, so people can sign up for leak alerts. And if they think they have a leak, it'll automatically let them know in the method that they choose. And via email or text when there's unusual usage. And then they can sign up under resident or business services on our website, clicking sign up for leak alerts. And then related to that, since we're talking about electronic services, we also can, I know I remind everyone of this frequently, but we also can pay bills electronically through e-billing and not have to get the old paper billing method, and also bill notifications. All that can be handled electronically if people so choose. And also we recently have an online vacation house check. So vacation house check is something the police have done forever, right? So if someone leaves on vacation, they can have an officer swing by their house periodically to make sure everything looks okay. That's called the Vacation House Check Program. And we put that online just recently, and the new part of that, besides the fact that it's online, is also that we can give them an activity report when they return from vacation. So they can see, when the officers visited and if they noted anything unusual. So just trying to provide a better service to people that use that. On construction, just in the budget item, just before, we heard about some of our capital projects coming up, and one of them is the East Cotati Avenue paving project. That's the paving of East Cotati from the city limits by Sunflower to the railroad tracks, the smart tracks. It's been a while since that's been repaved, and then the median island gets redone. So that's partially grant funded, matched with city funds. Another Measure G matched project, so that's great. And that's actually advertised right now, and bids are opening on July 2nd. Paving's expected to start in early August. But before we get to that point, I don't want to get ahead of myself. When we actually have the bids, then we'll be coming to council, so you'll see that soon. And then the 2019 road preservation project, that's all the paving that we've talked about in a meeting or two or so ago, and also with the street capital project plan that we talked about. We're expecting to advertise that in the next 2 weeks, so that's going to follow on the heels of the East Cotati work. So there's going to be a lot of paving this summer. And then recreation news. Last week we started the summer camp season off with a Spanish camp and Sleeping Beauty musical theater camp. Next week we have a sold-out first week of Camp Cotati with 28 participants and a Newsies musical theater camp. We also have 4 teens in our counselor and training program. I think we know actually one of the teens who is gaining hands-on job skills working in our camps. So that's an opportunity for teens, if you don't know the CIT program, for them to get some work experience, especially in that middle school age when they're not really old enough to work yet, but they can work in camps. And so they get the job experience, and then we also get some additional help with the camp programs, and just so we can serve the participants in the camp better. And then our other summer camps will go through the summer. That include tennis camp, farm camp, gymnastics camp, Lego camp, lacrosse camp, and more. And then last week was the beginning of the free lunch program for children, and the city participates in the sponsored program by Redwood Empire Food Bank. So Redwood Empire Food Bank provides the food, and the city provides the staffing to distribute the food at La Plaza Park. And we have been serving between 20 and 35 children a day, and continue to see more participation. And this is for any child under 18, and it's served every weekday in La Plaza Park. Just to remind everyone, this is, for a lot of the kids that are on lunch programs during the school year, there's obviously a gap during the summer, so this program is intended to fill that gap. And there's no paperwork required. You can just show up and have a complete meal beginning at noon in La Plaza Park. And as way of history too, originally when we first started the camp, we've been doing this several years now. When we first started, it was at City Hall, but it was harder for people to find that location, and so La Plaza is a much more accessible location, which is why the last couple of years we've had it there. And then the farmers market season began last week and will continue on Thursday nights throughout the summer from 4:30 to 7:30 in La Plaza Park. And the first week was a hit with new produce, hot food, and handmade goods plus live music. And also in La Plaza Park, since we're on the La Plaza Park theme, our first summer movie in the park was on Friday, The Goonies. If you guys are into The Goonies, there was an estimated, according to our staff there, 300 or more guests in attendance. It was a big outing. The lights that were installed worked great, where we could turn off the interior lights and have the perimeter lights for safety. So that worked really well. And they had so one of the movies that we started doing themes. So, the movies can't start until it gets dark enough to actually see the screen, and that usually is around 8:30 to 9, somewhere in there. And people finish dinner, close to 7, and then they kind of hang out for an hour. So we try to do activities, to keep people engaged before the movie actually starts. And because it was the Goonies, we had a treasure hunt, which ties into the movie theme. And there was a treasure hunt that went before the movie, and it was it was pretty funny. Anyway, it was great though. We had a ton of kids participating, and it was a great first summer in the park, summer movie in the park. And then this Saturday, June 15th, the Chamber of Commerce is hosting their second annual music festival in La Plaza Park from noon until 6. This is a free event that includes food and drinks for purchase and fun, which is free all day. That's the free part, the fun part. And beginning Wednesday, June 26th, we're starting the partnership with the library. And I mentioned this before, we're looking to partner with regional entities for programming we can do here. In this case, it's the regional library, and they're offering a free teen book club in the Copeland Room at 4 p.m., where teens can choose a free book to read. The library brings the books, and they can choose a free book to read. We will continue to meet on the last Wednesday of each month to discuss and recommend books to other teens. And then for rec programs, of course, like I say every meeting, if you have any interest or you want to know more about them, or to register or volunteer at an event, you can contact Ashley at 665-4222 or awilson@cotatiCity.org. We also have all this information on our website and our Facebook page, which...
There you go.
And we'll be continuing to explore other ways to get information out. And last, I just wanted some late-breaking things, something that was just received in the mail. I think maybe many people got this, but just to let everyone here know that because it was an item on the council agenda with the ARCO station outside the city limits at the corner of Stony Point and 116, the proponents for that project are having a community meeting apparently on Tuesday, June 25th at 6:30 p.m. at the Vets Memorial Building. Here? Vets Memorial Building, yeah. Yeah, it's June 25th at 6:30 p.m. And it's to talk about the project. So, anyway, flyers have gone out.
It's a council meeting night, of course.
It is, yeah.
Yep.
6:30 p.m. Maybe half an hour.
A bit of a stretch, but yeah.
Yeah. So I'm sure word will be getting around about this for people that are interested in it. Certainly, it was an item of interest for a lot of our community members. That's why we had it on our agenda last meeting. So, with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions for City Manager? Distraction? None? Distraction? Councilmember?
Just make sure I have this right. June 25th at the Veterans Memorial. Which were we talking?
I'm sorry, here in Cotati.
Cotati. I started to think of Santa Rosa, then I thought I might not be thinking the right way. So it's right here.
Right here.
We might be able to do something in a half hour. Whatever. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. That lunch program that's been going on for several years, I really think that's important. And the fact that, Redwood Empire Food Bank and the city are working together to feed kids that may not otherwise have something very nutritious. I think the next time or sometime even sooner, a nice article written up and sent to The Voice, I think would be a good story. I'm not sure that's a story where they would come out to cover it, nor would you want a photographer to come out to cover it, just, because you take pictures of kids. Probably not a good idea. Yeah, Josh is gone, I see. But I think, several paragraphs of writing up kind of its history and how many kids are served daily and why we're doing it. And I think it'd be a great story. Celebrate our successes, and that's definitely one of them. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll go on to item 15, city council member reports. I will start looking in this direction, giving him at least a few seconds to be prepared. Councilmember Landman, there it is.
I'm getting used to this. You're getting me trained.
I know.
My wife says that couldn't be done. Congratulations, Mr. Mayor.
There you go.
Let's see, just a couple of quick things tonight. First of all, I think some good news for all of us and all the ratepayers in Sonoma County as well as Mendocino County. Sonoma Clean Power rates for the year look like they are going to be much better than we were afraid they might be. Without going into a lot of detail, we've discussed the ongoing increased costs we bear through PCIA costs. Those looked to be increasing greatly again this year, just as short as a few months ago. I think we mentioned this, and we were looking at potentially not having that historic, slightly cheaper rate. As a matter of fact, might possibly even having to charge more. But thanks to a lot of work from the staff at Sonoma Clean Power at the CPUC, actually pointing out some problems with some of the charges that PG assigned to our customers. The good news is we got a lot of those removed, so we'll be more in traditional territory, a little more comfortably beneath them. So I think that's good news. Let's see. Oh, yes. So at SCTA, RCPA, the other day, we had a presentation from SMART. Evidently, the state has approached them about extending the line. Some of you might have heard from Novato, from Hamilton Air Force Base out to Suisun City. And I think the concept is they can get it out there, then it can tie in with the rest of the state rail system. So that's the long-term interest. As you can imagine, before anyone even got to ask the questions, Mr. Mansourian, who was there representing SMART, said very clearly that they will remain focused on service to Cloverdale, as well as the multi-use path, the bike pathway that's supposed to go back there. Nevertheless, we still all badgered him about it unceasingly, which is probably a good thing, because I do think this will tend to serve to defocus staff a little bit there. But there's, it's smart for them. They can't turn away from this. There's a lot of potential money coming from the state to support this and might even support some of our local goals here first. So it's worth looking into. And lastly, speaking of local goals, I'm pleased to mention at that same meeting, we did pass a series of funds from Rohnert Park, mitigation fees that were set up a decade ago to handle traffic concerns from their continuing growth. And we will be seeing $500,000, $500,000 going to a railroad corridor study. And this will basically be taking a look at that nexus between Old Red and Highway 101 along Railroad Avenue to assess that area and see what improvements might be able to help with traffic all along the corridor between Pengrove as well as traffic coming into Cotati that we deal with. So I think that's good news. That's the start right there to see really what we need to do and what can be done and what it costs. And then after that, we'll see where it goes. I know there's money left in Measure M potentially for things like that still. So that's a good first step, and congratulations to Mr. Scott for helping get us there as a staff representative on that. And that's my report.
All right, very good. Thank you. Vice Mayor Skillman.
Thank you. Just briefly, I attended the farmers market on June 6th, and it looked like it had been really well attended. Then I did stop by. I did not watch the movie. I had seen it before. But on the 7th, and I saw all of the kids running around doing the different activities. They had stations set up, and it was nice to see them all engaged and enjoying themselves before and while we were waiting for it to get dark enough. So that was nice to see. And then just sort of on a strange tangent, I have some friends from when I was up in Sacramento who are now touring the state at different libraries, and they're doing a presentation where they play music and they get kids to, not realizing it, talk about nutrition and exercise. And it's really fantastic to see them completely get these kids engaged on that level and have no idea that they're talking to them about what's good, healthy food to eat. Anyway, the name of the group is Musical Robot, and I watched them up at Windsor. They're going to be at the Cotati Rohnert Park Library on June 17th at 3 p.m., and then touring throughout several of the local libraries. So anyway, that was just kind of fun and strange to see this crossover with my life when I was in Sacramento and my life here on the library board. So, but that is all I have to report out.
Very good. Thank you very much. Councilmember Moore.
I do not. We have a remit meeting coming up next week, so I don't have anything to report out, and then other than we had a Chamber of Commerce meeting this evening, and they're focused primarily on the music festival. So that's what's going on there.
All righty, thank you. And Councilmember Harvey.
Nothing specific to report, but I've been attending quite a few water-related meetings, but nothing specific to report out. I also was on the call for the North Bay League of California Cities, and some of those bills are starting to pop around, so I'm sure we will be getting some notices for calls to action on some things as they kind of rear their little heads.
I like that, as they rear their little heads. That's good. That's very good.
Whack-a-mole.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's even better. Yeah, that's really good. Good visual. So the only council-related meeting I had since our last meeting was the Health Action Council last Friday morning at 7:30. And kind of the highlight there was a number of things that were discussed. They introduced this new dashboard system that's going to be internet-based, but it wasn't very clear whether it's meant for the health professionals or for the general public. If it's for the health professionals, it's great. If it's for the general public, it stinks. So there's a bit of work that needs to be done. There's good information there, but I think it needs a little bit of work. And we were also introduced to the Sonoma County Health Officer, a new new person hired into the position, Dr. Celeste Phillip, and she came from Florida. She's got California roots. Did all of her schooling here, but she was the Surgeon General for the state of Florida. So she came with very high marks, and the county got pretty lucky to hire her. So she just gave a very brief presentation, but it was good to meet her. And that is all I had. And we will move on to item 16, which is public comment on non-action agenda items. Mr. Barrich?
Council, for a future possible agenda item on a future meeting, maybe we can go into more detail about Cotati's debt service, which is primarily how you balance your budget. On page 331 shows our debt service, our long-term obligations of borrowing money in order to keep the city afloat, long-term bond obligations, sewer pipeline projects of borrowing $1 million over 20 years, so on and so forth. It gets a little complicated for the layperson, but I think it would behoove us all to have a closer look at this before you approve a budget. But since you approve one tonight, maybe we can look at it another time so we can really bring some clarity to this issue about how these cities oftentimes use a lot of chuck and jive and financial wizardry to balance a budget based on these long-term loans. And it would behoove us also, if you would please put in the glossary of terms, unfunded liabilities, because it's not in there, and I can't find the page that it's on, and you sure didn't talk about it much, but many cities have unfunded liabilities in the millions and millions of dollars. And I happened to be on the city council in 2009 when the city declared a fiscal emergency. But it was no emergency at all, because many of us saw it coming for years in advance. And we warned the city council what was happening, that not everybody in America can own a home who can't afford one. No matter what the Democrats say, we went into a financial free fall, this country, a big mortgage meltdown in 2008, and I was sitting in your seats in 2009 with the city manager declaring that we had to declare a financial emergency when I was arguing, no, it's financial stupidity. We don't listen. We don't want to be disciplined about money. Now we're here. Rohnert Park had plenty of money. They had reserves. And they weathered the 2009, 2010, 11, and 12. They weathered it. We were caught flat-footed. We were. Bob Coleman knew it. John Gardino knew it. I knew it. I think Mrs. Harvey was in the audience. She knew it. But it was called fiscal responsibility. And we passed a measure to put 25% into reserves. Because before that, the city council before that was too dumb to understand that you needed financial reserves. in a volatile economy. So I hope you come back and revisit this in a little more detail and try to take some personal responsibility and try not to hoodwink the public about all this long debt service.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no one else, I will move on to item 17, which is information received after the agenda was posted. We have none. And item 18 is our closed session topic. We will be adjourning to closed session for a conference with labor negotiators, Government Code Section 54957.6, one of my favorites, city designated representative, city manager or designee. Employee organization is Cotati Police Management Association. And I will open this up for any public comment. Mr. Scott wants to move back a row and make a public, no. All right, then I'll close the public comment hearing, and we will adjourn to closed session until we report out. Thank you.